Thanks, my friend. Yeah, I wrote that introduction for Doug this morning. Just make sure we got it all in there. Hey, we're excited that you're here this morning. One of the things that I love to do is I love to help leaders take their next step. And what I've found out is that there are a lot of programs out there to do it. But the farther I move in my leadership development, what I realize is there's not many that are willing to personalize it to me. They want to tell me what I need to do, but they never take the time to ask in what areas or what are your growth points that you need to move towards. And so this morning, what I want to do is I just want to take some time this morning to have a conversation with you about this idea of how do we plan our future? How do we look towards areas in our life that may be a sticking point for us? Another way to put that is maybe there are areas in your life where you feel stuck. As leaders, we often think of this idea of being stuck only with our vocational opportunities. I'm sure most of us have goals that we're trying to reach with our vocation. You know, if you're in a hospital setting, it's your patient scores and satisfaction scores. If you're in a financial institution, it's making sure you bring in more than you let go financially. If you're with a business, it may be to grow the business a certain percentage point in quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever that is. But the thing I found out is oftentimes we're great at planning vocationally. But those things that are set aside or those things that are other domains in our life, we struggle with. You know, think about it. How many of you have a plan for your family or your spouse or other people that if somebody came to you and said, what are you doing with your family this year? How do you want them to grow? How many of you have a place where you could say, hey, you know what? I know exactly what we're doing. Or maybe it's with your finances. We're going to dive into finances next month. But how many of you would say, you know what? I've got a goal. I know exactly how much I'm setting aside. I know what I need when I retire. I know what I need to make my family. You have that down. How many with your health? Do you have a goal that you can say, you know what? By the end of this year, health-wise, I want this, 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 and this. You know, for me this year, I've taken a look at my life and said, how do I begin to plan this? And so I began a deep dive into this, really starting several years ago. Several years ago, I hit my 40th birthday, and I was working with a coach, a guy that I call when I get stuck a little bit, and he said, wow, you're 40. I'm like, yeah. He's like, now how long are you going to work? I'm like, well, I would like to be productive close to 80. I said, you know, I probably won't work vocationally that long, but I would like to be productive in some capacity, probably till I'm 80. You know, whether that's coaching other leaders, being involved. He's like, do you realize you're exactly at your halfway point? And at that point, I kind of swallowed hard because I realized, you know what, I've got now less of my life to pour into that than I had before. And there was a quote that I ran across that he ended up using in my life that was pretty impactful. And it said this. It's out of Bob Goff's book, Love Does. It says, I used to be afraid of failing at something that really mattered. And as I look back at the first half of my life, you know, that was my fear. Am I going to be significant enough? Am I going to have something in my life that I can say is meaningful and productive and I've given back? But then he went on to say, you know, that's good, but now I'm more afraid of succeeding at things that in the end don't matter. You know, for me, that struck me pretty hard at that 40th birthday because I was moving in a track that in my life I had deemed pretty successful, and if other people would have looked at me, they'd say, yeah, you're pretty successful at what you're doing. But then I began to evaluate it on this idea of, am I successful at the right thing? And as I began to look at my life, I began to ask the question, when I get to the end of my life or the end of my productive journey, you know, when I'm ready to be done because of health or whatever, I want to be able to ask this question of myself, and I hope I get the right answer. When your time on earth is coming to an end, what do you want others to say about you? And I began to think about that and ponder that. And if you would have asked me that a few years ago, I probably would have said something like this. I want to make the biggest impact as an executive pastor that I can. You know, I was working in that executive pastor role. The church was growing. The staff was growing. My influence was growing. And that would have been my answer. But the more I dug into that, I thought if I get to the end and that's all they say about me, I think I might have missed the mark. I think I might have been successful at something that really in the end for me personally, may not matter a whole lot. And I got to be careful how I say that because I work here. But, if that's the end of what they say, I think I may have missed the mark in what we're doing. When I had to answer that question, I had to come to the point where I had to say this: success for me in the end is going to be if I can leave a long legacy of people who say, you know what, he helped me become the best leader that I could. And the interesting thing about that is when I finally honed in on that and finally came to the point where I said, that's my purpose in life, to help anybody I can become the best leader that they can be. All of a sudden, that opened up a whole new world, even vocationally for me. But at first, I had to come to the place where I could say, you know what, I know this is what I want them to say at the end. It changed every part of my life. As you think about that, we can look at the end game and begin to say, okay, I know what I want to do in the end. The problem is, how do I get there? What keeps us from accomplishing those things that really matter to us in life? I think if we go around the room and ask, I think all of us would say, you know what, I'm passionate about what my vocation is. But there's even more than this that I want to accomplish in this life. There's more of a mark that I want to leave than just what I do in my day-to-day job. Would you agree with me on that, most of us? Why don't we accomplish that then? Because most of us, we come up with, for lack of a better word, excuses when we do that. But what's keeping you from accomplishing exactly what you want to accomplish? Go ahead, shout it out real quick. What are some things that are keeping you from accomplishing what you really want to accomplish? Go ahead. Yeah. The priorities. We have so many things bombarding us. There's so many things that are vying for our time and attention. How do we prioritize all of this? What else? I'm sorry? Yeah, we may not know what that clear path is to get there. The difference between vision and a dream is a vision has a pathway to get there. If you don't have a pathway, it's just really a dream. It's a pipe dream. What else? Yeah, I'm comfortable where I'm at. It's that idea of oftentimes we have limiting beliefs within our system. It's the idea that I'm not sure I could do this and this. I'm not sure that I have the ability. I'm not sure that, I would even be successful. I've got kids and my kids take all my time. There's all these limiting beliefs that we have that we place upon ourselves that can cause us to do that. What else? Yeah. That idea that for whatever reason, I'm trying to get there by myself. I've got to do it. One of the worst things in our American culture is the idea of I'm a self-made man or woman. It's the idea that I have to do it on my own. All of these things can get in the way, and there are many of them. If we could spend all day just talking about what's getting in our way from accomplishing that. One of the big things is how we use our time, or the idea of what time constraints are put upon us. In the Bloomberg Law Review, there was an article, and I want to read to you part of it. It said this: in today's work environment, with unrelenting pressures to get more things done in less time, and the technological capacity to stay connected around the clock, employees often struggle to balance the demands of their work and their personal lives. Now, how many of you find yourself like that? You're like, you know what? I know I've got a 40-hour-a-week job, or that's what they pay me for, but I'm finding I'm getting emails in my off time. I'm answering emails at 9 at night. I've got all that stuff going on, and you're like, man, it never stops. How many of you would be honest enough to say that's me? I was laughing because 2 nights ago, our lead pastor here has gone doing some leadership development with our denomination, and then he's going to a conference this next day. And all of a sudden, I was laughing because Tammy was in New York, and I'm laying in bed at 9 at night, and we're texting back and forth at 9 at night. And we were laughing because I thought, I'm just getting ready to speak on this idea, and here we're working at 9 at night after, a 14, 15-hour day. as we walk along. So I was kind of laughing, saying, you know what, it's true. Even in a even in a church setting, we find ourselves doing that. It goes on to say this: over half of workers are stressed at work on a daily basis, and 60% say that work-related pressure increased in the last 5 years. Think about I went back 10 years, and I realized when I was kind of beginning my ministry journey, my leadership journey, something that happened was email. 10 years ago, I didn't take email home with me. You think about it, you remember that little thing that went, you got mail. We didn't want to sit at home for 20 minutes waiting for one email to download. So we didn't have to worry about that. We didn't have a cell phone, so if we went out to eat with our spouse or took our kids to the park, nobody could get a hold of us. And guess what? Life went on. But it says those demands in life have caused us to come to the point where life is stressful. Half of the CFOs in this study agreed that teams are stressed, with top causes being heavy workloads, unreasonable deadlines, and then the interesting one, and others have said this is the top one, work-life integration. This idea that in life, it's no longer balance. I don't leave work and come home. It's the idea of how do I integrate every single area of my life and make it holistic and make it good, make it whole. And that's really what I want to work on this morning, and just walk us through some exercises that say, how do I do that? When we look at our life, there's probably 8 or 9 domains in our life that are all pressing for our time. As we look at that, we have the intellectual domain. There's a lot of us who love to learn, and we want to read, and we want to grow ourselves intellectually. That takes time. We have the emotional toll. We have things going on in our life that are causing us stress, that are causing us worry, anxiety. That takes time. If we want to be physically healthy, that takes time. Many of us are married. Good marriages don't just happen, they take time. Some of us are parents at different stages in life. That takes time. Those of us with a faith background, we want to be involved in our faith and share our faith. That takes time. Our job, our vocation takes time. Avocationally, it takes time. Those hobbies that we have, those interests that we have. How many of you would love to develop a hobby? You're like, man, I would love to learn. Boom. But that takes time. Socially, we have friends. That takes time. Financially, if we want to plan and get ahead, that takes time. And we look at all these time crunches that are now pressing upon us. As you begin to think about your life, I want you to hear what the Harvard Business Review said in 2014. It said this: start by considering the principles. Be whole, be innovative, and be real. To be real is to act with authenticity by clarifying what's important to you. To be whole is to act with integrity by recognizing how the different parts of your life, work, home, community, self, affect one another. Everything we do affects the other, positively and negatively. Doing this means thinking and talking about what truly inspires you. Whatever that might be, it requires figuring out how to take incremental steps to get there. It's not easy, and I never said it was, but like the 6 people, and they identified 6 top CEOs, you can attain significant achievement in a way that fits who you are. These leaders show that it's your way that determines how you get there and will work for you. This morning, I want to just take some time. And I want you to spend some time here thinking about what one area in your life. I wish we had time where we could go through a whole life plan and develop all of those areas. But what one area in your life right now would you say that you feel stuck? You wish you could get farther ahead in. You feel like, it's not just clicking on all cylinders like I wish it would. I want you to answer this question. What domain of life needs your attention in the next quarter, so the next 12 weeks, in order for you to see movement? What would that be for you? Maybe it's with your job, maybe it's apart from your job, but what's that one nagging thing? You said, I need to see movement on in that next quarter. If you have that, I want you to write it down. You've got a handout sheet that we'll work through a little bit, but I want you to write that down, and I want you to really think about what's that one area for you. This is what I want you to do. As you get that, I want real quickly at your table to share with somebody else at your table, what's that one area for you? What's that area that you say, I want to see movement in this next quarter? All right, go ahead, at your table. Share real quickly. as you continue to think about that domain of life that is driving you, or that you're saying, you know what, I'm just not feeling movement there, keep in mind as you think through that what your life purpose is. You know, you may look back, and I look back and say my life purpose is that at the end, leaders would look and say, you know what, he helped me become the best I could be. This is where it gets tricky, because oftentimes what our minds go to when we think of that domain is not our end purpose, but it's the pressures of today. And we do have to plan for the pressures of today. I understand that. At work, I've got things that I do. I say I've got my broccoli and I've got my chocolate. You know, chocolate's the things that I love and could do all day. Broccoli are the things you do just because it's good for you. Like broccoli, I really don't care to eat broccoli. I'd rather have a plate of meat. But I have to eat broccoli because my wife makes me. And somehow she thinks it's healthy or something. So as you think about that, you know, in life you've got broccoli and chocolate. The problem is this: I find most of us spend most of our time on our broccoli and it doesn't really meet with what our purpose is in life. And so as you think about that domain that you're thinking about, is that domain in that area going to help you move towards what that end goal is? As you begin to do that and you begin to think about that, there's things that begin to happen, and there's dangers that we can run into as we think through that. The first danger is this: the danger to let others control our thinking. You know, there's a great sense to where society and those around us and family and friends can impose on us beliefs or thoughts that really aren't beneficial for us, and what we end up doing is kind of conforming to those rather than saying, you know what, I'm created for something greater, or I'm created for something more. You know, there's a danger that we let our misperceptions guide us. You know, I came from a rural area. You know, I could never lead an organization. I come from this background. I could never do this. You know, I'm not that great of a leader. I can't help others. You know, those are some of the things that kind of ran through my mind as I began looking at my goal or end game in life. And what I had to do is say, you know what, if I'm passionate about this, how do I develop a plan that will get me there? You know, really what you have to begin doing is you have to be honest about what you want. You have to begin to say, you know, is this really something that's moving me in the right direction? And then the next thing I think we need to do is we need to be clear about the outcomes that we desire. We have to define what success in this area looks like. So as you think about that domain that you just mentioned, what would success look like for you with that domain in life? As you think about that, Michael Hyatt, who wrote the book, and we'll give some away here, he came up with an acronym for make your goals or make your aim smarter. And this is what he did. He said, make it specific. Identify exactly what you want to accomplish. You know, sometimes we just say, man, it would be nice to. But it's different when we can make that very specific and say, this is what I want to accomplish. You know, a bad way is that I'm going to start a new newsletter that goes out. You know, that's not very good. It's not specific. It doesn't tell me what I have to do. A good way would be this. You know what? I'm going to publish a biweekly newsletter and call it whatever you come up with. That's specific. It tells me exactly what I'm going to do, exactly what I need to do, how often, and it gives me movement. He says we need to make sure it's measurable, quantify results. The bad ways, I'm going to call more people. A good way is, you know what, I'm going to make 100 prospect calls every week. I'm going to be on the phone to 100 people, and I can list that out, mark it, and do it. It's got to be measurable. Make it accountable, and I do this. Start with an action verb, not a being verb. You know, I want to become, you know, that's not well. Make it start with action. Make it do something. You know, you look at it a bad way. I'm going to earn $1 million in commission, but your best year is $150,000 so far. A good is I'm going to increase my income by 20% this year. You know, by making 100 calls, I can improve it by 20%. Make it time bound. Set a specific deadline. You know, for me, everything is quarterly. I don't set a goal that goes longer than a quarter, because what I find out, if I set it out a year, it waits and waits and waits. So I try to tie everything. If it's a bigger goal, I narrow it down and say, what do I have to do this quarter? You know, I'm going to rewrite my proposal. You know, no, good. I will draft, edit, and finalize our new pitch for a book by January 31st. Make it exciting. It needs to be personally compelling. Make your goals such that it's passionate to you. You know, one of the things I found in my life, if it's not passionate to me, if I can't make a goal passionate for me, something I'm passionate about, I'll never do it. You know, it's one of the things that I've wanted to do for a long time is lose weight. Let's be honest, losing weight for losing weight's sake just does not appeal to me. But I was talking with a friend about 1.5 years ago, and he said this, you know what, you want to work until you're 80. At the rate you're going with your health, you'll never make it to 80. But all of a sudden now I had a compelling reason. I knew that my end game was I want to be productive till I'm 80. And he said, well, if you want to do that, you know what, you're going to have to take care of yourself. And because of that, I was actually able to start exercising. I was able to write it down, do that. I want to get down to a certain weight, and I'm halfway there. So, you know, for me, all of a sudden when I tied it to a compelling reason, an exciting reason for me, I was able to move forward. Make it relevant. Make it appropriate to your season in life. You know, a bad one is I'll spend an hour every morning to personally develop myself, but I also have to drive my kids to school every day, and I've got to be at work by 6 and everything else. You know, that's probably not realistic for that stage in life. But you might be able to say, you know what, I'm going to read 30 minutes of a book every night before I go to bed. You know, that may work for your stage, but make it relevant to your stage, something that you definitely can accomplish with that. You know, for me, as I did that, one of the areas for me, to give you a personal example, this would be my goal for one of my goals for quarter number 1, to develop a 360 staff evaluation process that will be implemented by quarter 3. So I've got to develop what that is. I've started working on that, but it tells me when I'm going to do it. It's specific to what I have to do. And actually, even though this is vocational, it ties to my life purpose, because the 360 evaluation helps the individual become what they want to be. And so I've tied it to that goal and was able to say, okay, this is my specific goal for quarter 1 in one area of my life. You know, what you have to identify is exactly what that is. The next thing that you have to do is make it uniquely you. You know, you have to be the one to carry out your plan. Don't take somebody else's, but make it unique to who you are. Identify what you need to do to move the ball down the field. No one will take as great of an interest in your development as you will. You know, for a long time, I've heard people make the excuse that I just don't have anybody who will develop me. You know, I don't have people at my work who will help me move forward. The reality is, oftentimes as a leader, you have to take it upon yourself to do that. As you look at that, you take your quarterly goal, and then you begin to break it down. You say, you know what, I'm going to develop a 360 staff evaluation process that will be implemented in quarter 3 of 2018. This is how I broke it down. And these are actually the 2 things that I have to accomplish next week. Now, there's a whole lot more that went into it. But what I begin to do is say, what 2 or 3 things this week do I have to accomplish in order to move the ball down the field? You know, it's interesting because when we think in those terms, we realize that the development of our life plan is actually a process, not a thing right now. I had somebody who told me, you know, in life, we want things to be a toggle switch, not a slider. Do you know what a slider is? You know, you go up the wall and you slide your switch and the light comes on brighter or darker. What we want to do is we want to set a goal and immediately see the results. You know, we want to just throw the toggle switch and our life's better. The reality is we need to look at success as moving that toggle switch one step closer to the full goal. And so for me this week, it's write a short description for staff, 350 words that explains the benefit of this type of evaluation. You know, we've got a staff who, when we proposed this last year, was a little bit worried about, you're going to let other people evaluate me? You're going to send it to people who may not like me to evaluate me? Yeah, I think it's important. Well, trying to convince them of that was pretty tough, so I realized, okay, I'm going to have to step up, and I've got to write a compelling reason for us to move to this, that they understand so that they see it for their benefit. Then the second thing I have to do is evaluate the best method for distributing and collecting the 360 evaluation. You know, I've got to figure out what are the mechanics of doing that. And for me, these are the next steps in there. This is what I want you to do. You've kind of taken the time and you can say, okay, this is the domain. Take just a minute, and I'll just give you about 30 seconds, and write it in a way that's specific, measurable, achievable, and kind of through that list. I'll back up to there real quick. But go ahead and define what success will look like for you. Just on the piece of paper, as close as you can with that domain that you mentioned before. What would success look like for you in the end? How many of you had something that's not related to your vocation on there? That's interesting. When you stop and dream about something, often what we dream about and what we're passionate about is not directly tied to our vocation. And, that's exciting to see, because I believe if we want to become the best leaders that we can, we need to be holistically whole, not just vocationally whole in that. All right, now the next step, we talked about that as well. It's the idea of, what do I have to do this week in order to, from the Midwest term, kick the can down the road on your goal? What do you have to do this week? Maybe if it's weight loss, you determine, I've got to set up a different eating plan than I had before, or I need to incorporate exercise into my diet, or whatever that is. But write down 2 things this week, or maybe you say, I'm going to start next week, 2 or 3 things that you can tangibly accomplish to move the ball down the field on that this week. This is what I found. If I don't write it down, I don't do it. If I can't physically tell you what that next step is for me, it doesn't get done. So it's important that you can begin to identify what that next step is. So write down the 2 things, or 3. Whatever you think you can do with that. As I began this journey a few years ago at looking at what does it mean to really develop a plan for my life, and the person I was working with took me through this, and some of the books I read it broke it down this way. The interesting thing to me, at first I said, you know what, it's too simple. It can't just be 3 easy steps to get there. And in one sense, you're right, it's not 3 easy steps. But in another sense, it was right, because it moved me to a point where I could begin to look at every domain of my life that was important. And what I did is I took about 4 domains in my life that I said at the end, these are the ones that really matter. These are the sections of my life that really matter. My family, the leaders that I pour into, how I live my faith, and the other one was financially. As I looked at those 4, I said, you know what, those are the 4, when I come to the end of my life, I can bring those together. I will live that way. And while right now, this morning, we kind of looked at one and walked through the process, the first thing being to identify what I want my end game to be. Secondly, saying I can define it in a smarter way and define what that win looks like in my life. And then 3, I can break it down into incremental steps that I can accomplish each week. When I began to do that, something amazing happened, because all of a sudden, things began to move incrementally, like a slider switch in my life, to where things became clear. As I had different things in my life that they approached me to do, I could look at my plan and say, you know what, that really doesn't fit it. You know what, I would love to, but this person may fit better for you, because for me, it's just not part of what I'm capable and my bandwidth allows now. And as a leader, when I began doing that, what I found out is my effectiveness became even greater. And so I would encourage you, begin taking time to maybe 20 minutes in the evening. Just sit down and take those domains of life that are important to you and begin working through those. And then the danger is this, that you want to accomplish them all at once. And what I would encourage you to do is choose basically 2 or 3 things a quarter that you're going to work on to move forward. Maybe it's 2. Maybe your life's just busy enough 2 is all you have time for. But move that forward and then reevaluate each quarter and say, which one do I need to move to the top? Which one needs to take the priority this quarter? And begin doing that. There's a quote that I ran across that I love, and it's this: be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. There is nothing that saddens me more is when I talk to leaders than they say this: you know what, I wish I was doing something else. You know, what I'm doing, I'm just not passionate about. You know, when I sit down and begin to talk to them about their life, and as they're moving into their 40s, 50s, whatever that is, 30s, and they're saying, you know what, I wish I could be more effective at this, but I just can't. I believe that there are things that we are placed on this earth to do that sets our soul on fire. That when we do it, we could do it 16, 18 hours a day and be okay. As you work through the life plan or work through the idea of I'm going to set these domains in my life in the right order, the thing that will happen is you will become excited about life. You'll wake up in the morning. For those of you who are morning people, you already wake up happy. But for those of us who believe that when it's dark outside, we ought to be sleeping, you'll actually wake up excited about what your day holds because you've got a purpose and something sets your soul on fire. So I would encourage you as a leader in our community, find out what sets your soul on fire and move towards it. Passionately pursue it, because I believe Chambersburg and Franklin County will become a better place when we as leaders are pursuing something that makes a difference that we're passionate about. If you're thinking, if you're sitting here and saying, what are some next steps I can take even beyond kind of what we talked about here today? On your sheet, I put a couple of those down and just want to mention those. Living Forward, a proven plan to stop drifting and get the life you want by Michael Hyatt, and then also Your Best Year Ever is his newest book out. If you want to look at a guy who's got this idea of life planning and productivity down, look up Michael Hyatt. Look at his website. He is a phenomenal leader. He was the CEO of Thomas Nelson Publishing, one of the biggest publishing companies. And he basically quit that job to focus on leadership development and has just done incredible things with that. Take a look at him. And then the other one would be John Maxwell, Living Intentionally. He specifically talks about the idea of how do I live my life in such a way that in the end I make a difference? How do I intentionally live that? If you're wanting help with that and you say, hey, I would love to sit down with somebody and talk about this more and maybe even develop a whole life plan for yourself, I've listed 3 different people, myself, Denny, where you at? Denny Kuntz, and there he is, Randy. We've all done this with people before, and so I'd encourage you, reach out to one of us. We would love to talk with you about what that could look like for you personally. Kind of just whether it's where you're going and just need a second voice. One of the dangers we have is we shut other people out who are there to help us. The greatest thing I have is there are different times in my leadership career where I just needed a coach, somebody I could go to and say, hey, I'm in the trees. You have to help me look outside of it. I'm not sure I can look beyond where I'm at. And I've had people in my life that have helped me do that, and I would encourage you to do that as well. As you've looked at this idea of planning, and we've all done it to a certain extent, what are some tools or things that you have done in your planning processes that have changed the game for you? These are a few that have changed the game for me, but what's changed the game for you in some different areas of planning? Who said that? Where was it? Somebody? Yeah. If you're from a faith-based background, your faith, prayer, the guidance you receive from that faith-based background gives you an incredible sense of peace, belonging, direction as you do that. What else? Yep. Ultimately, what gratitude does, it allows us to look outside of ourselves. You can't be a thankful person if you're not looking outside of yourself. The two just can't go together. And I found when I begin to look outside of myself, the doors of possibility open hugely in a great way. What else? Yep. Yeah. Yeah, for me that's a huge thing too, because for everything I do, I try to have somebody younger with me. And I know I'm going to pick on him this morning, but Austin's here, and I love working with Austin. He's a growing leader within our ministry. He's running our sound, got all this set up for us. We have an intern that's kind of walking with each staff this summer, or right now and this summer, where we're just able to live life, and that meets the end goal of helping as many leaders and move forward as I can. Is it extra work? Yeah, but in that domain, it allows me 2 different things: one work and one end goal. So great thought. Somebody else? Oh, go ahead, Michelle, and then we'll move over to Doug. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nobody gets anywhere in life on their own. I love the saying, and I don't know who to give credit to it for, but somebody else said it, but if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a group. And there's a lot of truth to that. I can get somewhere quicker if I go by myself, but I will not get near as far as if I have a group of people who understand what my common goals are in life and are there to push me towards that. So, man, that's a great concept. Doug. Yeah. Yeah. What we believe about ourselves or the world around us will determine how far we can go. And that's a great truth. Somebody else. Yeah. Yeah. Great thought. It's being intentional, planning your day rather than allowing your day to plan you. I did something that was counterintuitive a few months ago. I went from a digital system for my day-to-day to a paper system where it's kind of integrated with technology, but I found when I sit down either the night before or early the morning of and begin to write down what I have to do that day, usually something changes because I realize, that's not the greatest priority. That meeting doesn't really need me there. This whatever it is, and it frees me up to begin to look and say, hey, you know what? I can do that different. I do that actually quarterly, weekly, and then daily in some form as I walk through that. All of us have things that we've learned. And I would encourage you, continue this conversation and find somebody who you can have it with. Because once you start verbalizing to somebody else what you're going to do or the goals or the dreams that you have, it can become incredible. The movement that you can make by just, my phrase, kicking the can down the road, one incremental thing at a time. When you do something intentional every day, over a quarter, you'll see a difference and make a difference. As we wrap up this morning, I just want to make you aware of a couple things. Next month, we're going to have Lynn Rotz with us. We're continuing down this idea of how do I become personally better as a leader? And he's going to be talking to us about finances, not business finances, but personal finances. And one of the things that he says is that he's worked with leaders from small organizations, mid-level to CEOs. And he said he's seen the finances of them, and they're all over the board. He said some of them have no plan; they have very little saved. They've managed huge companies well, but they struggle. But he's also seen them that have phenomenal wealth. They're using it well. They're using it intentionally. They're generous with what they have. And he said there's always a next step they can take, though. And so he's going to come talk to us a little bit about personal finances and how we as leaders can better manage that and work through that. I would encourage you to be here, invite others to come as well. We'll have several people from several different organizations that are financial planners that are willing to talk with us after, or you can set up appointments with. It's something that we're able to do and bring in, so we'll have them here as well. And then the next month, Kim Schatzer will be sharing leveraging your personal leadership, specifically around this idea of how do we produce a better culture or a more gracious culture within our workplace. And so it's something that we as leaders can do individually, but will also benefit our workplace environments and helping it to become the culture that it needs to be. So I'd encourage you, invite as many people as you can to that. We'd love to have this room filled. If we fill this room, we'll move to a different room that's bigger. So, we'll just continue to, as many people as this finds this beneficial, we'll continue to offer it as we do that. The other thing is this gathering grew out of something called the Willow Creek Global Leadership Summit. And it was a summit of leaders who, for 2 days every year, they bring in some of the best speakers from across the world to Willow Creek in Chicago, and we actually happen to be one of the host sites for that, where we live stream it in on a 20-foot screen, so it's actually like you're there. And so I've got just a quick video that tells a little bit about the Global Leadership Summit, and then I'll talk about it a little bit more afterwards.
The Summit is a 2-day world-class experience for serious-minded leaders who want to get better. It is intellectually rigorous, it is creatively inspiring, and the Summit is unapologetically Christ-centered. Every year, WCA carefully curates a faculty of top leadership experts across a variety of sectors: church, business, nonprofit, academic, and government, because we believe that leaders can learn from anyone. The Summit is an unprecedented global movement of Christian leaders making lasting change in the world. In the decades to come, it will become even more critical that the local church is working right. The church is still God's plan to redeem and restore our broken world. And it all starts when God transforms a leader.
We would like to invite all of you to the Global Leadership Summit. How many of you were able to be there last year? I know quite a few of you were. Yeah, quite a few of us in here attended last year. There's two questions I always get about this, the summit. One, is it worth my time? And I think I've not talked to anybody yet who has been to it that says, hey, it's not worth my time, it's not worth the investment that I make to go. And the second question I often get is this, like all pastors who talk? And the answer I give to that is, just like our gathering here, we have people from all faith backgrounds and no faith backgrounds that talk. In the brochure in front of you, there's the list of the speakers this year. They got some great ones. I'm excited about Simon Sinek. I believe he's there this year. Denzel Washington, Erwin McManus, if you know him, but they bring people from all over the world, from every domain of work. So they always have somebody from education, somebody from government, they have a pastor or two that usually talk, and it's just a great time together. Up on the screen is a code, because you come to this and we're partners with it. The normal price right now is $189. If you register through us or go online and use that code, you can get it for $89 for both days. So it is actually a great deal. Since we host it, we're able to do that. I can't just give out the code to everybody, but you guys have it, so you can get on with that. The other thing that we do is there are a lot of organizations that want to bring employees, if you're a part of one. We have rooms all around our building. We reserve all of the rooms for that time, for those 2 days, and we can actually give you a room. And what I say is, some of you say, I can't give up a whole day of work, but I could give up a few hours throughout it. We've got free high-speed internet through here, so if there's a speaker that doesn't connect with you and you want to bug out to a room that we can give you to work, we can do that. We'll make you feel comfortable. If you want to bring a group from your work, we can get your room to do that as well. So just talk to Doug or I, and we would be able to do that and help you with that. But I would encourage you, as many of you as can come, do. There's a code. You can get it for $89. You can share that with your coworkers and bring as many as you can, because we're excited about it this year as we walk through that.